The news is out. NASCAR and IMSA have teamed up for a major announcement, that being that NASCAR, IMSA, HMS, Chevrolet, and Goodyear are all planning to run a next-gen car from NASCAR in the 24 Hours of Le Mans. And this is going to happen in 2023. But more on that right after this. Spring is fast approaching, and with that comes getting out more, later nights, and of course, more NASCAR. So you don't want to be stuck in the store getting ingredients or stuck making a boring long recipe. Well, that's where HelloFresh comes in. HelloFresh offers delicious meals that also are great at saving time. These recipes come with the ingredients already pre-packaged and sustainable, and also come in different options. For instance, I chose a low-calorie healthy option to help with my marathon training goals. Right here, I'm having some delicious one-pan ginger beef lettuce wraps that I made with my girlfriend and friends. So, in order to get your HelloFresh meals, go to HelloFresh.com. Use code Iceberg16 for up to 16 free meals and 3 surprise gifts. That's HelloFresh.com. Use code Iceberg16 and get up to 16 free meals and 3 surprise gifts. Now, with that being said, back to the show. So yes, this is, in my opinion, a once-in-a-generation announcement. I know, and props to him for saying this, David Land said it would blow up the motorsports internet, and rightfully so. I don't think this is something anyone saw coming. Most of us were theorizing maybe it was NASCAR, running at Sebring since it was going to be the announcement there, or maybe the ASA would be brought back in some way. But I don't really think anyone was guessing this. Well, maybe a few, but not very many were guessing this. So there weren't many details given out. They're going to use a modified Next Gen Camaro. Of course, Hendrick Motorsports with Chevrolet. That's pretty obvious. But it'll be the first time since 1976 that a NASCAR stock car will compete in the 24-hour race. They'll be in Garage 56, which is allocated to different projects in their own class. The drivers right now are to be announced, but I'll get into some theories I have for later of who might be in the car, or at least people that we would want to see in it. They haven't said yet or not if the schedule will allow for Cup Series or current NASCAR drivers in general to drive it, but in general, this is going to be something that really puts NASCAR on a way different and bigger world stage than it normally would be in. From what it sounds like, it was brought together by Jim France being the chairman of IMSA and NASCAR, as well as the CEO of NASCAR. France also has been in talks about this for years. Apparently, he and Rick Hendrick were talking about this since the winter of 2020. Now, a few things that really were kind of semi-discussed but sort of danced around were that, well, one, the cars will have lights, according to Bob Pockrass, so we don't need to bother Bob about this. They didn't say if there would be electrification, but at the same time, they didn't say no. They kind of laughed it off. It was kind of awkward. So maybe they'll be testing that, and it will be much more different than a normal next-gen Camaro, even by the 2023 specs, which probably will mean that NASCAR is probably going to test some weird stuff out that none of us are going to really think of, or that isn't normal for a regular next-gen car in race conditions nowadays. Now, a few things that I really think are good about this right off the bat is that it opens up NASCAR to a wider, more European and worldwide audience. The world right now, because of the internet and the way that culture is moving, is becoming much more globalized when it comes to what the interests are. And NASCAR needs in every way to integrate itself as much as possible into the worldwide market. This also, in my opinion, gives NASCAR the chance again and continues the trend of going outside the box and being innovative. Ever since 2018, when Brian France unceremoniously left the sport, NASCAR and their leadership has been insanely innovative and has tried stuff outside the box. It hasn't always worked out, but you know what? This is something that has really been a break from bad tradition for NASCAR to do. So really, this makes perfect sense to me when you think about it in the full context. I wouldn't have thought about it before, but once they explain the motives behind it, it does make sense for NASCAR to try and do this. Now, it may be a chance to test the electrification for the engines. Of course, around 2024 is when they're looking to have hybrid engines, and this would be a really good opportunity, one, to obviously see the endurance factor of these engines, but to get a ton of data. Obviously, they're not going to be on the track for the full 24 hours. There's going to be stops, driver changes, brake changes, whatever may be. But this will be a great field test in pretty much all conditions, night and day, to see where the next gen stacks up with these engines compared to where NASCAR either wants them to be or has had them leading up to this. Rick Hendrick did say that Chad Knaus would be the team manager, would be putting everything together. So having one of the brightest minds in NASCAR history going about this will probably really help NASCAR if they are testing in this race to learn about different things. As for drivers, they didn't say anyone in particular that is locked down, but Jeff Gordon is someone that was mentioned by Rick Hendrick, though Hendrick did say he'd have to shed a few pounds off, and Jimmy Johnson is someone that Hendrick thinks would be interested. These are two guys that I think would be perfect to put in it. I think that more than likely this is going to interfere in some way or another with the NASCAR schedule, so you can't get your current stars like Chase Elliott or Kyle Larson to call off a race so they can go over and race in a completely different country in a completely different series. So honestly, if I'm going to do a little reckless speculation here, if you're going to have a good driver lineup, you need to have the best of the best, the most popular guys, the ones that will give you a good gauge of where they think a car should be versus where the car should be versus what the teams would think outside of just Rick Hendrick. So I have 4 guys right now that I really immediately have come into my mind. 4 guys that either are really talented, bring in a huge audience, or on top of that, have a lot of grasp into the sport and a lot of scope when it comes to their outlook. Number 1, Jeff Gordon. Of course, being an HMS team, I'm thinking that Gordon would be a very viable option for this. Jimmy Johnson. Johnson, even leaving NASCAR, is still one of the greatest, if not the greatest NASCAR driver ever, and having him there would immediately give a lot of prestige. A 7-time NASCAR champion doing this. Another one I'm thinking of is Tony Stewart. Stewart is someone who is not going to give a bunch of BS. He's going to go straight up and tell them what's wrong, what's good, whatever, if they do test it. Plus, I would think he would want the opportunity to run this kind of race. Again, a once-in-a-generation type of opportunity. And then Dale Earnhardt Jr. I know that when you look at stats and you look at the career overall, Jr. doesn't match up to the other 3 I mentioned, but I don't see NBC wanting to have that kind of opportunity get away from them. So I wouldn't be surprised if NBC really pushed for Dale Jr., especially if they're still heavily in the running for the next NASCAR contract, which will probably be hotly into the negotiation period by that point. Now, they did not say that there would be a Next Gen class at Daytona, though when it was asked, they were pretty awkwardly laughing, and they really changed the subject quickly. Dale Jr. did tweet that he's all for it, so that probably does hold some water. And I will say it would be really cool to see NASCAR going into different avenues of racing and showing their product or their cars or whatever off to different fans, to me, is always a plus. Now, there is a little bit of worry, I think, that some people have. No NASCAR car, granted this was around 50 years ago, but no NASCAR race car has ever finished the 24-hour race. Actually, none of them have even made it halfway. They've really made it around 7 hours at most. Hendrick did say the goal is to finish the race, the whole race, and run competitive times. They're not going to ride around. They don't want to finish last. And I think that this is a really good test of the endurance of these cars. They did say that they'll probably have enough stuff changed that these cars won't be similar enough to the cars that they're running in 2023 for a team like Hendrick to get an advantage. So that's a big thing there. Right now, it's just the big announcement out there. A lot of the finer details will be ironed out probably over the summer, fall, and definitely winter. So it's something that I think a lot of us are going to have to keep an eye out for as the year and next year starts and goes on. So now I want to pass this to you. What is your immediate reaction to NASCAR and IMSA teaming up with Rick Hendrick and Chevrolet to run a NASCAR Next Gen car in the 24-hour Le Mans? I want to hear what you think, so let me know down in the comments below. While you're at it, leave a like in this video. Share this video and subscribe to my channel for more NASCAR content like this. To all my channel members, thank you so much for your support. And until next time, have a good one.